A couple earning $500,000 a year, combined, nets around $278,000 after tax, and still only manages to save about $7,000 for the entire year. Not because they're bad with money on paper. Because of a pattern so quiet, most people never notice it happening to them until they're 40 and wondering where all the money went. Every generation swears they'll do it differently. Every generation gets the same raise, the same promotion, the same finally, some breathing room, and ends up in the exact same trap their parents were in. This isn't bad luck. It's a documented psychological mechanism, and once you see it, you'll never spend the same way again. The financial term is lifestyle inflation, sometimes called lifestyle creep. The definition sounds almost too simple to be dangerous. Your spending rises to match your income. A better apartment. A nicer car. More dinners out. It feels earned. Technically, you can afford it now. Here's the part that makes it dangerous. It doesn't feel like a decision. Nobody sits down and consciously chooses to stay financially stuck forever. The upgrades happen one at a time, each one feels reasonable in isolation, and each one quietly resets what normal means. Yesterday's splurge becomes today's baseline expectation, and once that happens, going back feels like a loss, not a choice. The mechanism behind this has a name in behavioral psychology: hedonic adaptation, sometimes called the hedonic treadmill. It describes the human tendency to return to a stable baseline level of happiness after a positive change, no matter how big that change was. The first time you stay in a nice hotel, it feels special. By the fifth time, it just feels normal. The specialness has evaporated, but the price tag hasn't. That's hedonic adaptation in a single sentence. Your brain is wired to seek improvement and reward, and the moment income rises, your mind immediately starts scanning for ways to optimize comfort, convenience, or status. Almost all of those optimizations cost money. The cruel part is the pacing. The excitement from a new purchase fades faster than most people expect, often within weeks, but the higher expense it locked you into doesn't fade at all. You're not living better after the upgrade. You're just maintaining a new, more expensive version of normal, chasing the same feeling you had before the raise. Not all lifestyle inflation is equally dangerous. A one-time splurge, a nice dinner, a vacation, costs money once and then it's over. The version that actually destroys long-term wealth is fixed expense inflation: rent, car payments, subscriptions, insurance tied to a bigger home or newer vehicle. These aren't easy to scale back. Once you upgrade your apartment or your car payment, you're locked into that higher number every single month, for years, regardless of whether your income keeps climbing. That's where the flexibility disappears, and it's exactly why lifestyle inflation is one of the most common reasons even high earners end up living paycheck to paycheck. The income is high. The margin is zero, because the fixed costs quietly climb to match it. Here's the part that explains the pattern crossing generations. None of this is really about discipline or financial literacy. It's about a psychological reflex that fires the same way in every income bracket, every generation, every culture that has consumer choice available to it. Money isn't purely practical, it's emotional. When income rises, spending often becomes a way to celebrate an achievement, cope with stress, or reinforce identity. I've made it, I deserve this. Social comparison adds another layer. Hedonic adaptation applies not just to your own past circumstances, but to the people around you. When peers upgrade their lifestyle, the comparison resets your own sense of enough even faster. That combination, a brain wired to chase improvement, an economy wired to offer endless upgrades, and a social environment constantly resetting the baseline, is powerful enough to override financial intentions in nearly every generation, regardless of how much that generation swore it would be different. Willpower alone consistently loses to hedonic adaptation, because the upgrades don't feel like temptations, they feel like reasonable adult decisions in the moment. The research-backed fixes are structural, not motivational. The invisible raise method: automatically divert a set portion of every raise or bonus directly into savings or investments before it ever touches your checking account. If you never see the extra money in spendable form, the baseline never resets around it. Track your savings rate as a percentage, not a dollar amount. A rising income with a flat or falling savings percentage is the earliest, most reliable warning sign of lifestyle inflation, often visible months before it shows up in your bank balance. Separate one-time treats from recurring commitments. A nice dinner ends. A bigger apartment doesn't. Scrutinize new fixed monthly costs far more critically than one-time splurges. Add deliberate friction to upgrades tied to fixed expenses, specifically a mandatory waiting period before signing a new lease, financing a car, or adding a subscription, since these are the commitments that quietly compound for years. Here's the mental shift that research on hedonic adaptation points toward. Since new comforts stop feeling special within weeks anyway, the reward for most lifestyle upgrades is temporary by design. You're paying a permanent, recurring cost for a temporary emotional spike. Flip that equation and the incentive changes. If the excitement fades regardless of what you buy, the more rational move is capturing more of every raise as long-term freedom instead of short-term comfort, because the freedom compounds, and the comfort doesn't. This is also why just earn more is incomplete financial advice on its own. Without a structural defense against hedonic adaptation, a higher income doesn't create more freedom. It just creates a more expensive treadmill running at the same relative speed. The couple earning $500,000 a year and saving $7,000 isn't an outlier story. It's the predictable output of an unmanaged psychological pattern operating at a bigger scale. The families who break the generational repeat aren't necessarily earning more than their parents did. They're the ones who put a structure between the raise and the recalibration, before the new baseline has a chance to set. Every generation thinks they'll be the exception. The ones who actually are the exception aren't smarter or more disciplined, they just stopped relying on willpower and built the automation before the next raise hit their account. Subscribe for next week's breakdown of another money pattern quietly repeating in your own bank account. Comment below: has a raise or bonus ever disappeared faster than you expected? I read every one.